Welcome to the very first monthly setup in the new mystery journal. July is this beautiful, rustic cottagecore dream. It has muted colours and farmyard animals, and it also has some pages that I've never included in a bullet journal before. I'm so excited to get started. Thank you so much for planning with me. If this is your first time on my channel, hello, my name's Erin. I make bullet journal and stationery videos, and I'm very excited that you're here. I'm using the Astral Travel A5 journal from KUMA Stationery and Crafts, this picket fence washi tape from JOURNALSAY, the Cottage Charm washi tape sticker set from the Washi Tape Shop, 2 solid washi tapes from Muji, and this text-printed washi tape from Paper Monogatari. Of course, my wooden letter stamps that I love and use all the time, and this little selection of pens, the 01 Sakura Pigma Micron, 2 brown calligraphs from Ultra and Olive, and the 192 asparagus-coloured Tombow Jewel Brush pen. There are links to all of these items in the description in case you also want to get your hands on any of them, and if you scroll down even further, I have some discount codes to some of those stores as well, so don't miss out on some savings. We're starting out the July monthly setup with a quote page on the left side. I wanted to really emphasize some of the words in the quote, so I'm using a mixture of my letter stamps and also some brush lettering with some pens as well. I was really careful to work out where the center of the page was first and work out where each letter should be based around that to make this quite symmetrical. The quote I've chosen here is from Henri Matisse, the Impressionist painter, and it says, "There are always flowers for those who want to see them." I thought it was a good choice, partially because it's quite literal for this setup. There are going to be quite a few flowers on these pages, but also because I feel like it's pretty interpretable. To me, it means you can always find something positive about a situation, but to you it might mean something different. So I was keeping in mind our giveaway winner here, because this journal, in case you weren't aware, is actually not for me. The previous version I called the giveaway journal through most of the videos, but I've decided to change the name because it has been a bit confusing for people. We're calling it the mystery journal now because it is a journal that I am setting up for a mystery person. So at the time I put together the spreads, I don't know who it's going to end up with. So my goal is to make it a journal that anyone could use. You'll see how I attempt that in the monthly setup as we go through, and I have also done the initial setup for this journal already live on the channel. So there's a link to that in the description down below in case you want to see that, but for now let's just focus on decorating this July cover spread. My idea here is that I want layers. Every time I'm using some washi tape, I want to be layering some of my washi stickers over the top as well. In the case of the solid washi tapes, that may mean putting the stickers directly over the top so they're providing kind of a background, but in the case of the patterned washi tape with the fence design on it, that might mean adding a little decoration right at the end of it in the form of a sticker that just overlaps the last little bit, so it sort of looks like the design was continuing, and it was always supposed to be that way. I really wanted this theme to be quite calming to look at, so I'm leaving lots of negative space as well, which means areas that don't have any decoration, so the design can breathe and not feel too overwhelming. That's the cover spread finished, but before we continue, allow me to introduce the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare, and how they've been helping me level up my script lettering. I've taken plenty of entry-level lettering classes at this point, but there's always room for improvement, and with Skillshare's huge range of classes taught by industry experts, I knew I'd be able to find the class to help me take my lettering to the next level. Ian Barnard's class, Level Up Your Script Lettering, was exactly what I was looking for. Ian covers ways to improve your letter spacing, connections, and weight balance, to take your lettering from good to great with some really handy analogies that make it so easy to understand. I hadn't taken this class yet when I was setting up the July bullet journal pages we're doing today, but I wish I had because I can already see some things I could have improved. If you aren't familiar yet, Skillshare is an online learning platform designed by creatives for creatives, so you can learn about lettering or photography or marketing or music or productivity, whatever it is you're wanting to learn, by actually doing the thing. Skillshare is the perfect place to start for that new hobby, side hustle, or career move, offering thousands of classes for all skill levels and even complete learning paths for anyone who wants to really dive in deep. No more "I want to" some days. With Skillshare, we're turning that into "I made it happen," especially if you're finding yourself with some free time over the Northern Hemisphere's summer. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video and for helping me level up my hand lettering every time. Back to our July pages, we're all done with the cover spread now, so we're going to turn the page and move on to the calendar. This one is a must-have for every single monthly bullet journal setup for me, just because I love the idea of having somewhere to collate all of the things you need to remember in a specific month. So obviously you have a future log at the beginning of the journal. Sometimes I find that as the year gets going, I kind of forget to flip back to this one, but at least if I have my monthly page, I copy things out of my Google Calendar onto here, and I am much more likely to remember them than I would have been if I didn't write them out with a pen. I'm using the 01 Sakura Pigma Micron here, which is a very fine-tipped fine liner, so it already looks quite delicate, but I wanted to level that up even further by using kind of a broken line instead of a solid line, so this calendar looks very soft. For those who like the dot grid spacing for these things, I've left 14 spaces blank on the left side of the calendar here. If you prefer to count dots, it'll always be one more, so that will be 15 dots on the left side and 8 spaces or 9 dots above the calendar. I've left 1 space blank at the top of the calendar, and each box is 4 spaces wide by 4 spaces tall. July starts on a Monday, and I also like my calendars to start on a Monday, so that's why this box is here, and then we have 7 boxes across the page, 1 for each day of the week. Now we get to make it pretty. Starting with adding some green marker in that top row where we're going to put the initial for each day of the week. This is the 192, and it is my very favorite green Tombow dual brush pen. I think the color is called Asparagus. It's slightly muted, it's so pretty. And I'm adding the number for each day of the month in the top left corner of each little calendar box. I'm keeping it really small, so our winner of the mystery journal has lots of room to write any events or tasks or things they need to remember on those days. Similar to on the cover spread, I'm jumping in again with my washi tapes, and we're going to layer some stickers down over this. I'm not going to make a solid border of decoration that goes all the way around the page, but it will be pretty much implying that. It will be a border with a few little white space breaks in between so that it doesn't feel too heavy and overwhelming on the page. Because July ends on the 31st on the Wednesday, that also means there's a little bit more space underneath the calendar on the right side of the page because there are no days there, which means I can get a little bit more excited with my decoration in that bottom right corner than I can in the top left where there's a bit less space. Calendar's all set, let's turn the page and move on to a new one for the mystery journal. This one's a currently page, and this was not originally my idea. I've included a currently page in my own bullet journal in the past. I got the idea from the lovely Len of, I don't know how to pronounce your username, I'm sorry Len, Fly, I'm not sure, on Instagram. Anyway, she has a currently page and it's gorgeous. My goals, favorites and musings page in my own bullet journal actually evolved from her currently page. This one is an adaptation again, so it's going to have 4 sections where Lens has 6. And where Lens is very much about what she's enjoying at any given time, it's to do with things that she's listening to or watching. This one's going to be like the goals section currently, where you're breaking down the things that you're aiming for, things that you're loving, things that you're feeling, and things that you're practicing. So it's not dissimilar to my goals, favorites and musings page or the snapshot that was in the previous mystery journal. It's just a bit of a different take on it. Now we just need a nice currently heading at the top, a little bit of decoration, and we'll carry on to the next page. This journal, I really wanted to have kind of a self-care focus, so whoever the winner is can really use this to make sure that they're staying on track with looking after themselves, as well as taking care of all of the tasks and to-dos that they have in their life, because that's something I've been finding I really need lately, so if I need it, surely someone else does too. And I have actually drawn the winner for this journal already. The winner is a lovely Charlotte. We have a few Charlottes who entered, so this Charlotte, I specifically included her Instagram username in the announcement so that we would know which Charlotte it was. We have been in contact and it is all good and sorted, although I haven't sent the journal to her just yet because I'm still working on the last setup. It's coming together so well though, so I can't wait for you to see all of the setups inside. This page is kind of a checkerboard, so it has planning space and then it has a section for pretty, and here are the dimensions for everything if you want to grab a screenshot and refer back to that later. The next page we're setting up is kind of a one line a day or a gratitude log. I actually didn't go ahead and put a heading on this one because I wanted the winner to be able to use it however they like, although I think I have added a one line a day heading on some of the subsequent setups, so I guess we'll call it that, but if the winner wants to use it as a gratitude log then they absolutely can. It's just a space to write literally one line every day about what you did or what you felt or what you're grateful for. I started with this green stripe down the left side, which is where we're putting the number and the initial for every day of the month of July. I'm offsetting every second line with a bit of a grey stripe so it's easier to track the line as it goes across so you know which day you're on at any given time, especially if you miss any days and you need to fill in after some gaps. That can be a little bit tricky sometimes. And then I'm just adding some decoration in the space that's left around, so most of this page is taken up with the functional part where you'll actually write your one line every day, so I didn't want to go too hard on the decoration, but we do want things to look consistent, so we need to use a little bit of everything on every page. I feel like this one's pretty easy to set up as far as spacing, but I'll pop the grid spacing guide up on the screen for you anyway in case you want to try this page yourself sometime. Moving on to a spread for trackers. Now, we actually have some pretty hardcore trackers at the beginning of this journal that can track the entire second half of 2024, so I wasn't sure if I should even include a habit tracker, style tracker in the monthly setups for this journal at all. I considered excluding it because there is so much tracking potential at the start of the journal, but then I decided I would include it anyway just in case. Some things that you want to track come and go and become more or less relevant depending on your circumstances, so for the stuff that you want to track all year or for the full 6-month period, that can go in the beginning of the journal, but for anything that you're just wanting to track that might change month to month, those are the ones that can go on this page. Just like the previous mystery journal, I wanted to include 6 trackers here because I feel like 6 is a decent number. It's like you have enough variety for if you want to track quite a few things, but not so many that it's overwhelming. I went for a vertically oriented tracker because I didn't want the winner to have to turn the journal to use the page, because that's something that annoys me these days, so if I don't want to do it, I don't want to make you do it too. And I've tried to center the tracker in the page as best I can so that it's kind of got a decent amount of space for decoration, because of course it does. Decoration is important to me. While I'm decorating, I'm also factoring in the page on the right side and trying to make sure that some of the decoration actually crosses the middle of the page, because that's a good way to link together 2 separate designs and make them appear like they really do belong together on the page. Don't worry, I actually didn't forget about the grid spacing reference numbers for you. I just am going to set up this right page first as well, and then we'll put them together because I forgot to pause for long enough to do that just on the tracker page, so we'll do them together. The right one we're setting up here is a spending log, and here's those grid spacing references for you. You know I love a spending log. I'm not including them in my own journal anymore because I have a dedicated financials journal now, but I love that I get to still include them in the mystery journal, so you can still see how I might set it up if I was including this in my journal day to day. The main reason I don't include it in my own everyday journal anymore is mostly just that it takes a long time to blur out when I go to do a flip through for this here YouTube channel, so I like to keep my private stuff private, and this means that I can just put it in a journal that I don't show you. It's great. This table has 3 columns. The first one is for item, the second one is for category, and the last one is for cost. Those relate back to the big overall cash flow tracker that's back at the beginning of the journal. So if you want to see how these 2 spreads interact, you can jump back to that video and you can see how they both relate to each other. Now I get to add some stickers to pull these 2 pages together. I feel like that really makes them look cohesive and intentional, but I didn't leave any white space at the top of the page for a heading, so I'm actually going to letter my heading onto some separate sticker paper instead and cut that out and stick the heading down like it's a sticker all its own. Also, I wanted to mention, just in case you haven't been able to get a good look at the text printed washi tape, this one is from Paper Monogatari, which is Anna from Journal Away's store, and if you look really closely you might recognise that the text that's printed on it is from Pride and Prejudice, which I just think is such a beautiful touch. I always want to try to bake in some flexibility into a journal that I'm going to be giving to someone else to use, so this next spread we're going to do is just the spare. It's exactly what it sounds like, to be honest. I'm just going to decorate a little bit of this page so that The winner can use it in whatever way they like for anything that I haven't considered or factored in for the other pages in this monthly setup. That means I'm going to leave quite a bit of the page blank so that it's still quite versatile and flexible, but we're going to add a bit of decoration because everything has to look good together, otherwise the theme is not theming. No grid spacing numbers for you this time because there's not really anything to tell you. I'm just doing some decoration in columns down the left and right sides of the spread, and the rest is up to the winner. We do have one more spread to set up before we get stuck into weeklies for July though, and that is the July reflection spread, which is not something I've ever done in my own bullet journal, just a reflection for a specific month. I do them generally at the 6-month mark, but not month to month, but I have seen some other wonderful bullet journal creators doing this, and I was like, that looks useful. And if we're talking about self-care, then reflection is a big part of that, so I thought it might be a good one to include. This one's going to be a full double page spread, so they're going to be elements that are part of the same spread on the left and the right pages. As always, I'm trying to factor in aesthetics and decoration while I'm setting up the functional parts of this one, so I'm staggering these boxes. They could have just been on top of each other, but by staggering them, I'm giving myself a chance to put some stickers on the page, you know? Here are the measurements for these boxes. I actually messed up and made the top row of boxes one space wider than the bottom row. So if you were going to recreate this spread, you could adjust that so they're both the same if you'd prefer. I don't think it's actually obvious, so I'm not mad about it. I didn't even realize until I was putting together that little graphic for you, so never mind. I'm giving each box a heading to relate to what should go in that box that you are reflecting on. We've got highlights, learnings, successes, and to work on. So this spread is intended as a way to celebrate your achievements for the month, remember anything that's really exciting or that you are really happy about in the highlight section, and also note down things that you're learning at the moment, whether that's to do with education or just life lessons, and also things that you are working on, things that you are trying to improve. And I'm going to improve this spread by adding some adorable stickers. Now the reflection page is done, it's time to get into the weeklies, and this is actually the area that I find the most challenging when I'm setting up for the mystery journal, because I have to come up with a lot of weeklies to cover, 6 months of the year in a really short amount of time. I want to make sure I'm varying the weeklies so that there is some fun variety between each one for the winner of the journal, but at the same time, sometimes I'm going back to some favorites and some classics that I know will always look good and work well. That said, I'm also always on the lookout for new weeklies that I haven't tried before. This one is a pretty classic horizontal weekly. I like to have 4 days on the left page and then 3 days on the right, leaving a little bit more space for decoration at the bottom of the right page than at the top of the left. If you prefer a more symmetrical layout, then you can add one more box to the right page and make that a note section or a list of tasks for next week or something like that. Every time the first falls on a Monday in a month, it just makes me so happy because it makes weeklies like this really easy. I actually really like the look of this horizontal weekly layout, but I find the way I like to make lists, I tend to prefer a vertical weekly layout. Hello, Mitsu. I'd be really curious to know if you also have a preference if you're someone who uses weeklies in your own bullet journal. Do you like a vertical layout better, or do you not really mind? Because this way I figure I just end up making 3 smaller lists rather than one big one. I hadn't had a lot of opportunity to use this fence washi tape pattern in a little while, so part of why I made the space on the right page so much bigger than on the other was because I wanted to accommodate a space that would fit this washi tape. It's so pretty. It does have a pretty short design loop, but I feel like because of the pattern that's on it, it's not really obvious that it's a really short design loop, so I don't feel like that has hindered my enjoyment of this tape at all. Onward to weekly number 2 for July, and this one is going to be a pretty good example of what I'm talking about when I say a vertical weekly versus a horizontal weekly, because this is going to have columns where you can write your to-do lists and your reminders for each day rather than a horizontal space. This is the kind of weekly that I find a little easier to use, but I still think the horizontal ones have their place, you know? I like to think when Mitsu's getting up on the table like this, particularly when I'm working on the mystery journal, he is blessing it with his little kitty spirit and making sure that everything goes well for the winner. So some of the columns are actually different sizes to others, although I know it doesn't look like that on the page. I've actually deliberately varied the size of them a little bit to make things fit really well across the page, so the left and right columns on both the left and right pages, the Monday, the Wednesday, the Thursday, and the Saturday, Sunday column, are 8.5 dot grid spaces wide, whereas the middle one, the Tuesday and the Friday, is actually 9 dot grid spaces wide. And I feel like when you have the page edges where you don't actually have functional dot grid spacing, they kind of balance out the extra space for the middle column and it balances everything and it all looks comfortable, so that worked out well. We have 2 more weeklies to set up and then we are finished with July. This one's going to be another horizontal weekly layout, and I'm just adding lines so that I kind of know where things are going to sit, although these lines won't really be important once we have decorated everything. This time, instead of just the 7 weekly spaces, we're going to do 8 and we're going to have a note section, kind of like I was mentioning you could do on the previous horizontal weekly. And that outside edge on both pages is where I'm going to add the bulk of the decoration for this one. So we'll add some washi tape there, we'll add some stickers, and we'll scatter some stickers around the functional space too, just so everything really blends well together. Most A5 dot grid journals have 38 dot grid spaces from top to bottom, so it's a little bit tricky to try and divide into 4. You can do it evenly at 9.5 spaces, but I prefer to leave a little bit of room at the top of the page instead. So basically taking those half spaces and just putting them all at the top of the page instead, and then making each of my weekly areas 9 dot grid spaces tall. Then we sacrifice the top of those 9 dot grid spaces and use that as the area where we write the name of each day and the number of each day, and then you have 8 spaces left over vertically where you can do all of your planning. It would be totally fine to leave the decoration there, but I always like to bring a little bit of my stickerage over onto the functional parts too, just in ways that they won't interfere with your planning. I feel like it helps the spread to look less rigid overall, a little bit more playful. Here's those grid spacing measurements for you in case you want to try out this weekly for yourself, and we've got one more left to set up. This one is my favourite weekly of the moment. I called it a SWOT analysis in my own June bullet journal plan with me video because that's kind of what it reminds me of, but I've loved using it so much that I'm bringing it into the mystery journal as well. Basically with this one, you just divide each page into halves horizontally and vertically, and then you're left with these 8 spaces. You can decorate whichever one of them makes the most sense to you as a space that you should decorate. I'm doing the top left box, but you could do the bottom right one if you wanted to, or a random one that could be really fun. I've seen people include a tiny calendar in this first one too if you like to know where you are in the month. Sorry, we skipped some line drawing and some lettering, but I promise you didn't miss much. I like to skip the top row in each of the boxes and then use the one below that to add the name for each day and the number. This weekly is going to get us up to the 28th of July, and after that, the 29th, 30th, and 31st all fall within the following week, but more of the days of that week fall into August, so that weekly is going to sit within the August setup in this journal instead. The part that really makes this pretty is when you jump back in with whatever your decoration is and just add it kind of where the lines intersect on top of the lines in between each day, or at the bottom of the boxes where you maybe won't get to as far as list making and that kind of thing. And this just makes it feel, again, like a cohesive weekly rather than just some decoration in the corner and then some empty boxes. But if you are team minimalism and you want to skip this part, of course you can do that. And with that, July in the 2024 Mystery Journal Part 2 is complete. Let's have a little flip through and see how all of these pages work together. If this isn't quite your vibe, I will have the July setup in my own bullet journal coming for you soon, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to stick around for that. I also have some previous year's July setups if you want to go back into the archives and get some alternative July inspiration. If you try a theme like this one or any of my other themes at any time, please tag me, I'd love to see it. I am at erinsmith.art on Instagram, and I hope the winner of this journal has a really good time using these July pages because I had such a good time setting them up. And I hope you had a good time too watching. If you'd like to enter one of my mystery journal giveaways, you'll have to wait until November for the next one to be open, but I really do enjoy the process so much, so I hope you will stick around and enjoy some more mystery journal setups with me. In case you're looking for some more July inspiration, there is a link on the screen now to my July setup from 2023, which has some fun light academia lacy elements and some birds. And underneath that is the new journal setup for this mystery journal as well, in case you want to see what I've included at the start of the book.